Hey friends, welcome to the Time for Living podcast, your ultimate guide to finding the time you need to crush your business dreams while still having time to live your one beautiful life. I'm your host, Lucy Clark, a devoted boy mum, dedicated business owner and time-finding expert. Say goodbye to that I'm too busy mindset that's holding you back from growing your online business. No more feeling overwhelmed or stuck in the same place year after year. Each week, we'll dive deep into strategies for being intentional with your precious time so you can hit those business goals while still making time for yourself and your family. If you're ready to create more time, get practical tips and prioritize the steps that will make the biggest impact on your business and life, then you're in the right spot. Pop in your earbuds, steal a quiet moment, and let's find time together. Last week, I said nothing needs to be built yet in our businesses whilst we work through our change stage. That the work right now is defining, not constructing. That revenue instability at this stage is almost always about carrying too much without a clear hierarchy. And that the answer to that isn't adding more to structure. It's getting honest about what actually matters. Today, we're staying in that same place. Not building, still defining. But we're zooming into one specific moment in your revenue path where the absence of a defined sequence is costing you the most. And most people don't recognize it as a structural problem at all. They just think they're bad at follow-up. Someone reaches out, a DM lands in your inbox, an inquiry form comes through, a reply to your email that says, "I'm interested, can you tell me more?" And instead of momentum, something else happens. A pause. A small, quiet spiral. How do I handle this one? Do I send the link now? Do I ask a question first? Do I get on a call or just quote from here? Do I follow up if they go quiet? And if so, when? And what do I actually say? By the time you've worked through it, the moment has shifted. Their energy has cooled, or yours has, and what could have moved forward just didn't. This is where revenue actually stalls for most businesses at your level. Not at visibility, not at lead generation, not at your offer being wrong. It stalls at the conversion moment, in the space between someone showing interest and actually paying you. And it stalls because that space is full of decisions you're rebuilding every single time. That's what this episode is about. Now, I want to be clear about how this connects to what we've been working through. Last week was about the foundation, the question of what to define before you build anything. And specifically why building infrastructure before you've defined what matters just organizes the mess rather than reducing it. This episode is more specific than that. This isn't about your whole business. This is about one moment, the 36 hours after someone says yes. I want to know more. Because if you felt like sales are inconsistent, like some inquiries convert and some just disappear, and you can't quite figure out why, it's worth looking at whether there's actually a defined path from the first message to payment, or whether you're improvising it each time. Most people are improvising, and it feels professional. It feels considered. It feels like good client care, actually reading the situation, personalizing the response, handling each person as an individual. But there's a belief underneath that worth naming. The belief is personalized response equals professional response. That each inquiry deserves to be handled uniquely, in that moment with fresh eyes. That having a defined sequence would make things feel scripted, rigid, less like you. This belief is understandable. It comes from genuinely caring about your clients, and it's quietly costing you. Here's what handling it case by case actually produces at the decision level. Every time an inquiry comes in, you're answering the same set of questions from scratch. How do I respond to this specific message? Do I send the link now or wait? Do I ask qualifying questions first, or does that feel cold? Do I quote from here or get on a call? If they don't reply in 2 days, do I follow up? What do I say if I follow up? How many times is too many? These are not bad questions, but these are decisions. And you're making all of them in real time with whatever mental bandwidth you have left at that moment the inquiry arrives. Which, if you're honest, is often not much. Here's the distinction that matters. Personalized does not require improvised. You can have a clear defined path from inquiry to payment, with the decision points already worked out. and still deliver a warm, attentive, human experience. The defined path handles the structure. You handle the relationship. But right now, if both of those things live in your head, you're doing both jobs from scratch every time someone reaches out. And that's where the fragility comes from. Let's talk about what's actually breaking. When there is no defined conversion sequence, when the path from interest to decision exists only in your memory, a few things happen consistently. Every inquiry becomes a fresh decision tree. You're not following a path, you're building one, and then building it again and again. Follow-up depends on memory. If you remember, you follow up. If you're in the middle of a hard week, you don't. The timing isn't strategic. It's whatever bandwidth is left at the end of the day when you finally surface from everything else. Messaging shifts, not because your offer changed, but because you're responding in the moment, in different states, with different energy. One week you're clear and confident, the next you're rushed and second-guessing yourself, and the message comes out differently each time. And here's the one that's the hardest to see. The path to yes closes not because the prospect lost interest, but because momentum broke down on your end. You meant to send something. You weren't sure exactly what, you waited a day too long, the window passed. Revenue becomes fragile when the conversion path only exists in your head. Not because you're disorganized, not because you don't care, because a process that lives in your head is always subject to your capacity in any given moment. And capacity fluctuates. That's not a personal failing, that's just the reality of running a business while also running a life. The diagnosis here isn't discipline. It's not that you need to be more consistent about following up or more intentional about your sales conversions. The diagnosis is that making every conversion decision in real time increases the cognitive load of each inquiry. And cognitive loads compound. The heavier your mental load in any given week, the more likely something drops. And what drops is usually the thing that doesn't have a structure catching it. That's a design problem. And design problems don't get solved by trying harder. Here's the other thing worth naming, that it's not about losing bad fit clients. The opportunities that slip through are often good ones. People who are genuinely interested, people who would have said yes if the momentum had held. They didn't go cold because they changed their mind. They went cold because the sequence broke down and they moved on. That's what an undefined conversion path actually costs. Not just revenue in the abstract, specifically the revenue from people who were already interested. So here's the reframe. You don't need better follow-up habits. You need a map. Not software, not a CRM, not automation. Not yet. Remember, you're still in the defining phase. Just a visible sequence that answers the questions you're currently answering in real time before the moment arrives. Think of it as a simple flowchart, one page, a defined path that holds the decisions you keep remaking, so you don't have to remake them every time. When someone reaches out, what is step one? Not, it depends. A defined first response or action that happens every time, regardless of how busy you are. If they respond, what is step two? Is it a call, a proposal, a specific question? Define it now so you're not deciding it under pressure. If they hesitate, what happens? Do you send more information? Do you give them space? Do you ask a direct question? You should know the answer before the hesitation arrives, not while you're in it. If they go quiet, what happens next and when? One follow-up? Two? After how many days? And when is the path considered closed? That last one matters more than it sounds, because if you don't have a defined point at which you close a path, you carry every open inquiry indefinitely. It sits in the back of your mind. You wonder whether to reach out again. You feel vaguely guilty about not following up. And that mental weight is real, even when nothing is actually moving. Defining when you close a path is as important as defining the path itself. Because closed paths free up cognitive space. And cognitive space is where clear decisions get made. A visual conversion map takes all those answers out of your head and puts them somewhere you can follow. And here's why that matters more than it might sound. Every time you have a defined next step, you make one decision instead of 5. You follow the path instead of building it. And the mental load of your entire sales process drops. Not because there are fewer inquiries, but because each inquiry requires less of you to handle. That is the mechanism. Defined paths reduce decisions. Reduced decisions free mental space. Freed mental space means fewer dropped opportunities. Not because you're trying harder, but because the structure is holding what you were holding before. This is still the defining phase. You're not building a system. You're answering a set of questions you've been leaving open, and answering them once in advance changes everything about how the sales moment feels when it arrives. Stable revenue is rarely about more leads. It's about fewer decisions between interest and payment. That's the truth this episode is sitting on. When sales feel inconsistent, the first question most people ask is, do I need to be more visible? Do I need a better offer? Do I need to work on my confidence in sales conversions? Sometimes, but more often, especially at the stage you're at, the inconsistency is structural. It's not about the number of inquiries coming in. It's about how many of those inquiries successfully make it through to payment. And if the path between the two is undefined, you always get to be at the mercy of your capacity in that particular week. Some weeks it'll go well because you have energy and bandwidth and you catch every follow-up. Some weeks it won't because you don't, and you'll attribute the inconsistency to the wrong thing. You'll think it's a confidence problem or a visibility problem or a market problem, when actually it's a path problem. The path is undefined. So every time someone shows interest, you're starting from scratch. And starting from scratch every time is expensive. Not in money, in the quiet drain of making the same decisions repeatedly without ever resolving them. And that drain is cumulative. The more undefined your conversion path, the heavier the cognitive load of each new inquiry. The heavier the load, the more likely something slips. The more things slip, the more inconsistent the revenue, which creates more anxiety, which makes the whole thing feel harder than it should. That loop is breakable, but it doesn't break through more effort. It breaks through definition. So here's your one action from this episode. Create a one-page flowchart of your actual current conversion path, from first contact to payment, including what happens when someone doesn't respond. Not an ideal version, not an optimized version, your actual current path, as it exists right now, even if it's messy, especially if it's messy. Write down what you actually do when an inquiry comes in, what you actually send, what you actually follow up, what you actually do when someone goes quiet, and when you consider a path closed. Just map it. That's the whole action. If you want the exact questions that walk you through creating this conversion path step by step, in the right order, I've put them in one place for you. You can go to timeforliving.co/path and download the worksheet. It's not a template to optimize, it's not a system to build. It's simply the questions that pull the path out of your head and onto paper. Because once the sequence is visible, the decisions stop living in your memory. The point is not to perfect it. The point is to make it visible. Because you can't evaluate a path that only exists in your head. You can't strengthen something you can't see. And you can't stop remaking decisions that were never actually made in the first place. Once it's on paper, you'll immediately see what's working and what's creating friction, where decisions are still open, where timing is vague, where the path just stops, and that visibility is where the next step becomes obvious. But that clarity comes from mapping, not from doing more. If revenue has felt inconsistent and you've been wondering why, this is worth an hour of your time this week. Map your actual conversion steps, from first contact to payment, including what happens when someone doesn't respond. Not so you can build a system on top of it yet, just so it exists somewhere outside your head. That's the shift available to you right now, and it starts with one page. And that's it. That's the work right now, this week. Not building, defining. And there's something that shifts when you do this. When you take a process that's been living in your memory and put it somewhere visible, it stops feeling like a discipline problem. It stops feeling like something you need to try harder at. It becomes something you can actually look at, evaluate, and trust. And that shift, from carrying it to seeing it, is where the next step becomes possible. Next week, we're staying in the defining phase, but we're moving to a different part of your business. We're looking at your offers, and specifically why some offers feel heavy to sell even when you know they're good. It's not the offer. It's how much your brain has to do every time you deliver it. We'll delve deeper into that. And thanks for being here. I can't wait to chat with you next week. Hey friends, thank you so much for tuning in to the Time for Living podcast today. If this episode inspired you to take action and save time,
I'd be so grateful if you could leave a written review and subscribe over on Apple Podcasts. Your feedback means the world to me and helps us reach even more amazing people like you. If you know a friend who needs to hear this message, share this episode with them. And remember, your time is precious, so make every moment count. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep living, and keep making time for what matters most.